So this is going to be a ranking of films that I saw in 2022. Now ideally this list or video would have been out in 2022, but you know what? Better late than never. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. How do you fuck up a Buzz Lightyear movie? Well, watch this movie right here. A piece of propaganda disguised as a kids movie that forgot to be fun, missed the spirit of what a Buzz Lightyear movie should be. It was too caught up in its own political agenda and forgot to be, what's the word, good? If you actually want to see what a real Buzz Lightyear movie should be, watch the Buzz Lightyear of Star Command pilot TV movie that they made back in the 90s. That movie was actually fun and remembered to be what a Buzz Lightyear movie should be. And no, I did not see Strange World, otherwise that film probably would have been at the bottom of this list. But between that and Lightyear, had it not been for Turning Red, which itself wasn't perfect, it would have been a dreadful year for Disney and Pixar animation. The first streaming movie on this list, The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, an under-the-radar piece of shit that came out at the beginning of the year. Now, not saying that the Ice Age films are the greatest animated films ever, hardly, but they definitely have their moments, their own style of fun and humor that definitely makes them worth watching in their own right. This film had none of that. Its continuity was weird and didn't match up with the previous films. The animation was terrible, terrible voice acting, no scrat. Overall, yeah, this movie fucking sucked. Morbius continued Sony's misguided attempt at making Spider-Man villain movies and making throwbacks to some of the crappy early 2000s, 90s superhero films like Catwoman, Elektra, Steel, absolute pieces of superhero trash. With all these villain movies they've done, the only one that I've liked is Venom Let There Be Carnage. But between this movie, Morbius, and the first Venom, both movies definitely sucked ass. In a year that was actually pretty solid when it came to horror films and whatnot, Halloween Ends definitely stands out as being haphazard and lazy at a lot of points, even though I didn't think the movie was a complete disaster. Overall, the best thing that the film definitely did do was actually end the story between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers in mostly satisfying fashion. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it stays that way and we don't see any Michael Myers anytime soon. Pinocchio was another standard Disney live-action remake, and that's considered not really to be a great thing. Like most of the other ones, it was just the original, just with a new shiny coat of CG live-action paint over it that didn't add anything to make it stand out or improve in the original story in any way. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that blue fairy shit. That was a really weird creative decision right there visually. Coming off of Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder was just okay, I guess. I had some fun at times, but it was a bit too agenda-driven and writing-wise inconsequential for my liking. Probably the biggest disappointment for me was Gore the God Butcher. Christian Bale, he was okay in this, but that character writing-wise was just nothing special, and I definitely expected more of him based on the trailers and what was showcased. Jurassic World Dominion did some fun stuff in the first half of the film where we got to see, what happens in a world filled with dinosaurs, and that stuff I really enjoyed. But unfortunately, the second half of the film was every single Jurassic Park / world cliche that we've seen in these films dozens of times, where it's a lot of fake danger, no one's really in any real peril, and just a whole bunch of cliches in that second half of the film. And writing-wise, my goodness, 3 films into this Jurassic World trilogy, and these writers just have no idea how to write compelling human arcs or any consequential human arcs that just makes you say, hey guys, do better, writing-wise, please. My perspective on Uncharted might be a little different from most, as I never played the games or knew any of the storyline in the games. But just as a standalone movie, I thought this was an okay adventure type film. It had some decent characters, decent adventure type storyline, and some really good action scenes. I mean, the sort of airplane, cargo, skydive scene was really cool. And then that scene at the end with the pirate ships, the battle in the sky with the helicopters, oh, that was an amazing action scene and definitely ended the movie on a high point for me. Hocus Pocus 2 will mostly satisfy fans of the original, as it gives you a solid amount of the Sanderson sisters doing the kinds of things that people or fans want to see them do, and what I thought was overall a decent, solid-ish movie that I didn't have too many major complaints about. I was surprised that Disenchanted got beaten up the way it did by critics. because while it's no classic that the original Enchanted was, I thought it had songs and a storyline that worked in its own right, and Amy Adams was once again great, or I guess enchanting, as Giselle. In what'll go down as one of the final efforts of the current DCEU, Black Adam was a crowd-pleasing enough blockbuster that had a solid amount of positive elements to counteract some negative elements such as story and villain, and had one of the most exciting mid-credit sequences that unfortunately won't mean shit in the long run. Terrifier 2 was hands down the most disgusting horror film I've ever seen. It was as bloody, red, disgusting, gutsy, gory as any fan of this kind of stuff could hope for, while being entertaining at the same time. Probably the most terrifying thing about it for me, though, was that this movie had a runtime of 2.5 hours long. What? That is way too long for a movie like this, and by the time the movie was getting towards end, it just became exhausting and I ran out the theater, despite having a good time for most of the movie. Nope was an alien story unlike any I've ever seen before, and while the film won't exactly satisfy everyone just based on how it plays out, the uniqueness of the film definitely makes it worth watching, and a showcase of more original, interesting stuff from director Jordan Peele. Sonic 2 is definitely an improvement on the original film, which I thought was just okay. Jim Carrey is once again a true delight as Dr. Robotnik Eggman, and the film has definitely a lot more whiz-bang pop action effects and spectacle going for it, which the kids will absolutely love, and I think it'll mostly satisfy older audiences, at least to some degree anyway. I feel a lot of viewers' dissatisfaction with Multiverse of Madness was that the movie did not include some of the stuff they thought it would include, and maybe sort of subverted expectations. I don't know if that's really a flaw with the movie, maybe more so expectations. However, I really enjoyed the horror elements that were included here. I mean, that's a Sam Raimi special, obviously. Scarlet Witch was an absolute badass. I loved her villainous turn here, and there were plenty of other fun moments here, such as the various visual sequences, the Illuminati, or seeing undead Doctor Strange do his thing. I mean, that was crazy to watch towards the end of this movie. Turning Red was an enjoyable coming-of-age story from Pixar, even though the movie definitely has some messaging that most parents might find a little bit troubling. But the movie definitely had a lot of fun with the whole panda gimmick thing. The humor worked fine in the movie. Now, the movie definitely became weird towards the end, at times unnecessarily so. But overall, if you had to have watched one Pixar film in 2022 between this and Lightyear, this was definitely the one to watch. I guess no one really knew what to expect from The Way of Water. I mean, the first film wasn't exactly a film that stuck in a lot of people's cultural consciousness, even though it did make a ton of money. But thankfully, this movie wasn't nearly as cliche as the first Avatar. There was more originality when it came to the story, even though some of the sequel revelations when it came to characters didn't exactly always turn out the best writing-wise anyway. But the film was definitely a continued showcase of these amazing visuals and special effects. All of that stuff was on par with the first Avatar, probably even better, just as the technology goes with the years since the first one. Unfortunately, this movie has another runtime problem for me. We're going at over 3 hours long. This movie became exhausting towards the very end, just because the middle of this movie was so bloated, just by the continued underwater showcase, to where I get it, James Cameron, you know, you love you some water, you love the water, you love going underneath the water, and you love these Avatar whales. The movie just spent way too much time on that towards the middle of the movie, which was a shame, because I thought the ending action sequence, the final battle, final like 30 minutes or so of the movie, was amazing. It was some spectacular action that just really did just save the movie, because it was a final battle that was on that level in terms of how that whole sequence played out. It's a shame that the overall movie couldn't have come in a leaner package, but this movie definitely had its fair share of major positives going for it. Violent Night started off alright, but the film definitely got better and better as it went along, to where its level of action, violence, and humor definitely makes it a very memorable Christmas movie and a new holiday classic for most audiences, while amazingly still having a true Christmas message in it, appropriately so, and now people can watch an action movie other than Die Hard during the Christmas season. Under the direction of Matt Reeves, The Batman was fully committed to its noir style of filmmaking, tone, and detective story, giving us easily the most brooding Batman film we've seen. We've seen some pretty brooding ones, and easily the most brooding and emo Batman that we've ever seen. But I did like this version of Batman overall, and I did like what they did with all of these classic Batman characters like the Riddler, Catwoman, Penguin, Commissioner Gordon, etc. This was another movie though that kind of got effed over by its runtime. Going at a runtime of 2 hours and 56 minutes is definitely way too long for a standalone solo first Batman adventure in a new series. It's hard to say what exactly I would have cut out though, because I thought all the content in there was pretty solid. But yeah, this movie definitely didn't need to be goddamn near 3 hours long, even though I still thought it was a good movie overall. Third best Batman movie, after The Dark Knight and Batman Begins. I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once on a plane on my trip to Disney World in August. I had heard good things about the film. Watching it, it was definitely a fun drug-induced trip that put a nice spin or twist on everyone's obsession with multiverses these days. Wakanda Forever had a tall task ahead of it in following the phenom that was the original film and having to pay tribute to the late Chadwick Boseman, which ended up in this film being completely rewritten essentially. But under Ryan Coogler's leadership, we got a film that was emotional and epic, and showed that the world and characters of Wakanda are something truly special in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Smile was the best original horror film that I saw in 2022. Its lore and concept were executed very well and were very interesting, and the thrills and psychological terror just kept on coming and coming to where by the end you felt just as crazy as the main protagonist. Never in a million years would I have thought that the spiritual successor to Who Framed Roger Rabbit would come in the form of a goddamn Chippendales Rescue Rangers movie. Boy, we did get it here, and my god, this movie was fucking fantastic for it. The writing, self-aware humor, the style, great animation when it came to the CG and traditional animated parts. Oh my god, this movie was easily the best direct-to-streaming movie that we got, and one that kind of flew a little under the radar given how people don't really talk about it as much as they should. And then, of course, the added element of the whole thing of all of these properties coming together. Obviously, you got Disney, but you got stuff from Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, Universal, DC Comics. Oh my God, it's just a movie you could watch over and over again for that reason and get something new each time. I had never seen an episode of Chippendale Rescue Rangers before. It came out a little bit before my time, but you don't need to have seen that show to enjoy this movie because it has so many great elements going for it. Though people will try to deny it now, the original Top Gun is really nothing special. While it was good for its time, I guess it's an overall so-so story that's just there to be a dude movie and show off some aviator stuff. Top Gun Maverick takes things to the next level, filmmaking-wise and quality-wise. As a blockbuster, this movie is just a breath of fresh air when it comes to that touch of reality and human touch that it has. You know, in a day and age where every blockbuster these days is either dinosaurs chomping, sorcerers multiversing, or scientists avataring, watching a blockbuster like this that really makes you feel something is one of the many reasons why this film was the box office phenom that it was in 2022. Cruise was great, the aviator stuff was great, the story properly played off of the major stuff in the first film. For those reasons and a lot more, Top Gun Maverick gets my vote as the best and my favorite film of 2022. So there you have it with my ranking of all the films that I saw in 2022. Like any other year, kind of a mixed bag when it comes to quality, but it turns out there was a solid amount of decent stuff to watch in 2022. I guess my major problem would be that it just felt like in 2022, there was large gaps where there's really nothing to watch at the movies, particularly in the second half of the year, after the summertime. But I guess nowadays you gotta realize that there's your share of stuff to watch on TV if you're not watching stuff in the movies. With Marvel having its share of shows that I watched like She-Hulk or Moon Knight, then of course you had the Star Wars shows like Kenobi and Andor, and other stuff I really enjoyed like Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, and of course Stranger Things Season 4, can't forget about that. So overall, there's the stuff that I watched in 2022. I'm loving the lineup of movies of stuff to come in 2023. When you look at that lineup of movies and stuff that's coming up, it's going to be a fun year of movies, at least on paper, if these movies can deliver. So there you have it with this ranking video of all the stuff I saw in 2022. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.